an economist and a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening. And good evening to your cherished listeners.
Good evening. Fixing the cedi depreciation has been one of our biggest problems and illusions, if you want to describe it as that. It has been a major campaign message into election 2016, but as we speak, it appears to again be a campaign message in election 2020 because we haven't done any better. Now, the question is, we have seen the gold for oil, which was introduced by the government, an apparent attempt at stemming the tide. We know that may not have largely been successful. The government intends to. Okay, so the government intends now to introduce, through the Bank of Ghana, of course, the Ghana gold coin. Again, the hope is that if you want to invest, and usually people would buy dollars and keep them, do not buy the dollars, buy the gold coin. Would you? I don't know. What do you make of this, first of all?
Well, thank you very much. I think baseline, I associate with the intervention from the central bank to the extent that there are very limited alternative avenues right now in the market, and therefore any genuine attempt to offer alternatives will be welcome. The next important question, as you rightly asked, is whether this is the solution we have been waiting for all this while. And I think it's not too hard to look for that and to conclude that that is not the solution. The reason, in as much as we acknowledge that this is an alternative, the market is dry, largely also because of lack of confidence and all of that. This is not the solution. You want to look at it from two different angles. One, it is the introduction of the gold coin is not a substitute for managing the economy well. It is not. And I want to believe that it is not packaged as a substitute for managing the economy well, because the fundamental driving factors pushing the cedi to lose its own against the major trading currencies, when it comes to fiscal discipline, when it comes to enhancing the productive capacity of the economy, less import reliance, adding value to the export of your raw commodities, this doesn't substitute for all of that. It doesn't. So it is very difficult to put this side by side, the fundamentals, the deteriorating fundamentals of the economy. I think that is baseline. The other bit to look at is also that what is happening right now is a confidence issue. There's very little confidence in the economy. If you look at the treasury bill pricing and the fact that the central bank itself, together with the government, have struggled in the last couple of months to meet their targets, even in the face of excess liquidity in the market, as Bank of Ghana claims, then certainly it tells you that the mere introduction of the gold coin is not the solution, the immediate. Usually when you introduce a product at the beginning, of course, people are a bit hesitant to buy into it immediately. But the other good news with this is that the central bank is backstopping this, and therefore, that is not Ghana government. But of course, to also come to think about it, that the Bank of Ghana actually doesn't have a viable financial position. That is a fact. If you look at the losses they booked in 2022 as a result of their overexposure to Ghana government, which resulted in over 60 billion losses, it will take them years to recover from that. So the central bank itself has more or less ceased to be a bank of last resort, because the bank of last resort actually needs a bailout from a government that is already in a bailout arrangement. So that is another. Offering that backstopping it necessarily doesn't offer much comfort to investors. That is another way to look at it. The other way to look at it is whether the gold coin is a pure and direct substitute for buying dollars or foreign currency. That is very critical. If it is being introduced as an alternative to buying the dollar or foreign currencies as a store of value and or maybe necessarily also as a form of investment, then one would want to see the yield, whether the yield offers a comparable return compared to what you would have gotten if you had bought dollars and all of that. Remember, investors have options. They can choose. They look at the pricing and all of that. The other good thing is that the transaction or the exchange rate that Bank of Ghana is proposing to use is the Bloomberg mid-rate, which is far better than Bank of Ghana's official rate that they normally keep. Of course, that would also help to build some confidence in the gold coin, if you look at it from that perspective. So I think that we will still need a little bit more information about this gold coin so that we are able so investors will be in a position to analyze and see which one is better off and all of that. I think it's early days yet. We still need a little bit more information about the pricing mechanism, the trading window, and all of that.
Okay, I'm just wondering, do we have countries that have been doing this, and has it worked for them? And again, what would be the difference between buying the gold from the government through the gold coin system and also just going to the refinery and going to buy your gold and keep if you want to, or go to the jewelry shop and go and buy your own gold? What difference would it make for the one who is buying to invest?
Look, investors have a way of coming to their own conclusion. As I said earlier, this is not a substitute for doing the right thing. You remember when Bank of Ghana promoted this gold for oil to the extent that it was going to be like more or less a panacea to the depreciation of the city. If you have gold and you could sell the gold and get the FX, and there will be increased supply of dollars in the market, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. If we are able to restore confidence in our economy, remember that what the domestic debt exchange has done to us, we are all paying the price. So when the central bank governor says that there is excess liquidity in the market and people are looking for options, it's because the secondary market has practically collapsed. Even though the government instruments are trading, the appetite for it is very low. It's going to take us a while. Okay, and it doesn't look like we are on course to doing the right thing so that we're able to restore investor confidence and jumpstart the secondary market the way it should and all of that. Then again, if you look at the treasury bill, the money market rate versus the rate of depreciation of the CD against the dollar, then one is better off actually buying dollars and keeping it rather than going to buy treasury bill. Because Bank of Ghana's own depreciation rate from the beginning of the year to date, they are quoting something around 24% depreciation. If you compare that actually to going to buy treasury bill and all of that, that's not hard for investors to choose where they should put their money. So those are the considerations. Okay. And also, another thing to bear in mind is that the whole economy is a good economy, right? From responsible and irresponsible mining and all of that. And the Bank of Ghana itself is also cashing it. So it's not something that you want to say that just by introducing the gold coin, then stability will be restored immediately and all of that. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
I see. Before we go, there's another thing that the BoG announced today. The monetary policy rate has been reduced to 27%. It used to be at 29%, having been dropped from 30%. Now, it has been at 29% for 9 months. The idea, we are told, in the reduction of in the monetary policy rate is to provide some respite for borrowers for the next 2 months or so. What do you think of that too?
Well, it looks a bit contradictory for me. We want to promote private sector growth. You want to channel lending to the private sector. Great. But in the last 2 years or so, all that the central bank has been doing is to mop up excess liquidity from the market. That is certainly going to affect how much credit can be made available to the private sector. Okay, so Bank of Ghana has been mopping up excess liquidity from the market, not only from the policy rate point of view, but also from the tiered required reserve ratio. So they've adjusted them depending on your loan to deposit ratio combinations. The required reserves you are supposed to keep with the central bank rises from 15%, 20%, 25%, and all of that. Beyond that, the central bank is also demanding that the effects of foreign exchange accounts at the retail level that the commercial banks are keeping, the required reserve component must be kept in CDs with the central bank. This is also done to mop up excess CD liquidity in the market and all of that. So all that we are doing is to mop up liquidity from the market. But at the same time, we are saying that we want to increase lending to private sector. Okay, so that's very difficult to achieve under the circumstance. If you look at the Ghana reference rate where it is, and you look at the ultimate lending rate, okay, slightly above 30%, clearly this is not the kind of interest rate that will be supportive to private sector. Okay, so we are just paying less service to saying that we are supporting the private sector. We are not. We are actively not working towards making credit cheaply available to the private sector for them to grow. We are not doing that. Okay. So it's very difficult. And again, the introduction of the gold coin with the aim of mopping up excess liquidity, all of that necessarily doesn't make private sector that comfortable in terms of access to cheap capital. That is not. We can't talk about interest rate of 30%, 29% or so as enabling, as supportive to private sector. Then, of course, you can also see the growth drivers that we are all celebrating. Look at the drivers of the growth from Ghana Statistical Service data. Gold, okay, crops. Look at pure manufacturing. That isn't doing well necessarily. Okay, what is the level of investment that we have in the gold sector, oil, and the rest of them? So those are the things that I believe that we have to consider. But we are not at the stage where we are actively courting growth because the threat of inflation hasn't been dealt with necessarily. But at least it's good news to the extent that there's a marginal reduction in the policy rate, 200 basis points. In elsewhere, that would seem significant. But if you look at it, that your policy rate was 29% and you are bringing it down to 27%, that doesn't look like a significant reduction, actually. But of course, if you look at the yield, right, the real return probably is very high. If you look at where inflation is and where the policy rate is, then there's very little reason to keep it still at 29%. But merely reducing it to 27% necessarily does not improve liquidity and the cost of it to private sector, because there are other interventions Bank of Ghana has put in place in the market to mop up the same excess liquidity, including the adjusted required or the tiered required reserves, and then also other market operations that they are conducting.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Prof.
God bless you.
God bless you too. That's Professor Godfred Bokpin. He is an economist and a professor of finance